Oh man, here they come again.
Here they come again. This still has skin on the skull.
So now we're to the point where David's like, I don't need this piece of technology. We're looking at it in the Hebrew in the text, and we're looking at Rabbi Rashi, who is supposedly from the bloodline of David, who's done the deep dives in the Talmud to say, no, it's basically saying it fit. That's a misrepresentation for what that means. In the King James, it says it wasn't proved. Never said it didn't fit. He just didn't prove it. He didn't approve it, is basically what that means. So David's like, okay, I'm going to go and get these stones. God's telling him to go do it. So he takes his staff in his hand, this is verse 40, and shows him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. So here in this verse, the word stone is abonim in the Hebrew. It happens 41 occurrences in the Bible, and it just means stone. Just means stone. It doesn't sound exciting for everybody listening yet. But in this verse, it just means stone. That's it. It's just a stone, and that's where we're going to go with that. So, verse 41, and the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. Verse 42, and when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy, and fair of countenance. So I've heard some theologians try to make because they've done the deep dives and they realized that the armor fit from earlier. I've actually read some crazy studies where they thought that David was actually grown and he could fit the armor, is why that Saul wouldn't have given him armor if he didn't think that it fit. I don't agree with that. We're looking dead on the verse where he said he was but a youth, ruddy, and fair of countenance. So he's definitely not a grown man.
And Saul was also involved with some occultic people too.
Absolutely, which we're going to get into.
It's not just
Saul.
some regular guy that's like, hey, yes, I'm royalty. Here's this regular armor. He's messing around with some people who had some otherworldly knowledge that he was involved in. So that he was involved with, and which is an important thing to also point out. So he could have given him some weird, and that's what I love about the Bible. It's such a there's so many crazy stories within it, and it's a lot more interesting than people give it credit to be. And here you are, you can literally extract hours and hours of information from just these simple lines of text. You know what I'm saying? Like you're painting a whole different story. It's almost like a sci-fi epic, right? It was what's next? Lightsabers? Like, well,
we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting that's next.
Yeah. So, verse 43, and the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves or sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. So he's basically like, looking, man, what are you coming? Like, because he's walking up with a staff. We heard it earlier in the text. So all he sees is the staff right now. He's probably not paying attention to the rock and the sling and all that. Then David said, the Philistine, thou comest to me with the sword and with the spear and with the shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast to fight. So David's pretty confident at this point. Went and picked up some real confident. He just turned down some mythical, magical armor that he could have worn, that technology, however you want to say it, alchemically fit him perfectly, that wasn't supposed to, just shrunk down to fit his size. And he said, nah, I don't need this. It's wild to think about. To me, that makes it even crazier to me. The fact that he had some piece of technology that...
Because if this is real, like, how many people would be like, thanks?
Right.
Like, and he's like, nah, I'm good.
So this is wild, where it's going to get really, really interesting. And I know that Juan's going to go on some crazy tangents here, which I'm going to love. And this is where the stone...
I'm ready, bro. I'm queued up.
The stone comes into place. So verse 49, and David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. The word for stone in the Hebrew there is different. Abonim was earlier. When he picked it up, it just meant stone. Now it's eben, E-B-E-N. And this is a host of different meanings that eben can have. Eben breaks down into sapphire, which people derive from the word sapphire. One of the main structured meanings that it means is consecrated. This was a consecrated stone at this point. This stone was imbued with power from God. It was transmuted, or in alchemical words, transmuted. It changed in that moment, whether he pulled it from the brook and it changed when he had it, or however, but it morphed. It changed into something different. This is in the Hebrew. The stone is different now. It's not the same stone. It's a completely different object at this point.
Which goes back to this idea of rejection of what the king gave him, and whether he knew that or not, let's just say he didn't know. It shows in that moment so much faith on his part that God's got him. And then to see that as how you're talking about it, it's like the stone, it's like God, it makes me wonder, this is what I'm trying to say. It makes me wonder what could have happened if he said thanks, because him walking on that faith then allowed God to flex and say, you didn't need that because watch what I do. Whether when he picked it up or if it's in midair, and I'm just, in my cartoon mind, I'm thinking Zeus going zap, and it's just like all of a sudden it changes and it's like a boulder and it smacks in the face.
The rejected stone becomes the cornerstone.
Cornerstone, which we're going to get into those verses today too. And that cornerstone is also Eben. It also stands for Eben. That stone in the cornerstone is Eben. And I'm about to throw you the baton hardcore here.
The oop to the layup. The
Eben also stands for the firestone. It is also worded as the firestone, which in Ezekiel 28, 14, and 16 speaks of, you were anointed as the guardian cherub before I had ordained you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked among the firestones. He's talking about Lucifer. This is before he got kicked out. By the vastness of your trade, that's when he was trading with people in old earth, and I've done an episode on that already. You were filled with violence and you sinned, so I just drove you in disgrace from the mountain of God, and I banished you, O guardian cherub, from among the firestones. It's the same stone that David now has in his sling. It's the same word. He's got a firestone with him. And what is that firestone? What is that regular stone? Abonim changed to Eben, to this firestone, this consecrated firestone that he took Goliath out with. And by the way, there is thought that Nephilim, and people will understand this terminology in different occultic realms, the third eye or the pineal gland, which I think we all have, and I think they try to dumb us away from that. But the pineal gland, it said that Nephilim used that as a psionic weapon to where they could disrupt your brain when you're in battle, to where you don't know where you're at and you feel like you're losing your mind. They're able to do that because they could psychically knock you out, almost like with a psychic bomb. Where did he hit him? In the middle of his forehead, where the pineal gland's at, till it sunk into his head. How is a regular stone sinking into his head? It wasn't a regular stone anymore. It was a firestone. It was something completely different. It transmuted into this whole other thing. That's why he didn't wear the armor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You answered my question. I was going to ask you if it says exactly where it hit him, because it hit him where the third eye is, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, right, we talk about, and you guys are in for a treat. Not a lot of people know this about me, but I was actually raised Pentecostal Christian.
You said that on my show already. Everybody knows that.
All right. Anyways, I don't talk about it a lot, but an interesting part about it, because I've always talked about this, where when the Holy Spirit is in the house, you can feel it, right? It's like it's in the air. It's something about it. And it's interesting because Paracelsus talked about the Holy Spirit perhaps being that prima materia that helped God, because, right, in the Gospel of John, he talks about he was with God at the beginning. So he's talking about the Holy Spirit being present when everything is being created. And let's say that Genesis is, for a second, alchemical, and it's about the creation of a universe, the creation of a minitus mundus is what they call it, a small world, essentially. And that God, the Holy Spirit was there. Well, the Holy Spirit, Paracelsus argued that was the prima materia, which the prima materia is something that you need in order to achieve the magnum opus. And one of the magnum opus is the Philosopher's Stone, the Firestone, where you have the red stone and you have the white stone. One is used to make gold, the other one's used to make silver. And there's various things you can do, but think about that, right? If the Holy Spirit helped David out, let's say as soon as he slung it, he was able to conduct this transmutation through the use of the Holy Spirit, because God was there to help him. It would make sense that as soon as it was going to hit him, maybe it did blow up, right? And it like doubled in size or
How
whatever.
cool would that be?
Yeah, that would be dope. But
But that would you think if that actually happened though, it would have made the text, right? Like
Yeah.
it became a boulder and smashed his head off.
Yeah, it took his head off. But think about it, because we're talking about the Nephilim and all that stuff. And if we follow the lineage back, the knowledge of alchemy came from the Nephilim. And I'm just thinking outside the box here, where let's say the Nephilim did teach this too, right? And we know that the Noah and his lineage was involved with alchemy and all this stuff, and that's why they were able to live for so long, because they had the elixir of life. Let's say that they also use that tech, even if it came from Nephilim, which are darker entities, demonic in nature. Who's to say that the good guys weren't also using that technology for their own purposes?
I've always argued that Adam and his lineage already had this version of technology, that what the fallen entities taught and what the Nephilim taught was the corruption of the original connection that we had with God.
Like a repackaging of
Absolutely.
something that's
And I think a lot of people, when they hear the word alchemy, they automatically think bad things. They automatically think occult, and they think that it's something. I don't necessarily use it that way, because to me, it's just an overarching term.
It's the manipulation of matter and reality itself.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
Which I think that the guys of old, Methuselah, Noah, Adam, all these guys could use that. They knew how to. I mean, we even know from the book of Jubilees, and this is one of the apocryphal books, that when Adam sinned, that God cut off the mouths of the animal kind and anything that Adam could talk to anymore. I don't think it was necessarily them using their mouths to talk. I think it was a telepathy that was cut off at that point, where we were no longer able to have those conversations with animal kind anymore. Think about whales. You know, whales have one of the most extensive vernaculars in the world. They have a bigger lexicon than we do.
Bro, that's why. And somebody told me this on my show. I don't know if it was Justin from Cryptids of the Corn, but there was somebody on my show that told me, or it might have
show?
Cryptids of the Corn.
Okay.
It could have been after the fact, or maybe it was a private conversation, where the first animals created in Genesis were the whales, depending on which translation you read. Okay, and that's interesting because it connects to a whole bunch of other stuff. But you're talking about whales. They just recently came out with some AI that you can talk to whales telepathically 1,000 miles away. And it's interesting that in the movie Avatar, they were doing what to the whales? They were extracting this sort of elixir of life thing where it would extend people's lives, and it was worth a crazy amount of money.
They were extracting it from the whales?
From the whale's brain. Have you ever watched the new Avatar?
No.
Anyways.
Listen.
So, spoiler
I haven't
for those
seen
people.
movies.
The
What's a
whales,
movie?
the whales in that movie have their own religion, their own philosophy, and they talk, and they're like super spiritual creatures. And I'm like, these people are reading these texts. They're reading the same thing that we're reading, because in the first animals that God made were the whales. And when you look at the Bible, like for me, and look at all these names for the Philosopher's Stone, there's like at least 15 names for the Philosopher's Stone. Got a whole bunch of names. To me, when I got into this sort of realm of topics, I'm like, where can I connect alchemy in the Bible, like religiously, right? Because it doesn't take away from the Bible. It doesn't mean anything. It's just another layer for you to be able to look at the Bible. So when I Googled, like out of nowhere, I'm like, alchemy in the Bible. And then I came across Raphael Patai, hopefully I'm saying it right, one of his articles, biblical figures as alchemists. And I'm reading this journal, this paper, and it's blowing me away, because then I'm able to take that as a base and then go deeper. I was telling you, like, how about this guy, Job, alchemist, Gideon, alchemist, like all these guys. And then come to find out, I'm translating other texts where it's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of commentaries on the book of Genesis. And I was like, well, why is that? Well, because they thought it was about creating a different reality. And I'm like, the Bible, I think, has been stripped away from a lot of the esoteric and occult knowledge, and not the bad occult stuff. And I think it's done on purpose, because the powers that be don't want us to have access to a lot of this technology.
The supernatural's been ripped away from the Bible. And you and I talk about that all the time, Tony. And I think that was designed by the church when they first got in there, because once they taught people that they had to go through people to get to God.
It's a brokerage.
Even if it's a brokerage of what the text means. Think about this. You know, there will be people that listen to this episode and instantly get angry. And you know why they'll get angry? Because somebody on a pulpit or somebody told them what the text meant. They didn't look into it for themselves. You know, we're not even saying that this is it. We're just saying this is a idea of what these texts could mean because
thinking about the text.
Because of the actual translations of these texts and the deeper meaning of it. Also, when you said occult, for the people out there, occult just means hidden, by the way. It doesn't mean a negative thing necessarily. We do use it as a negative
call
thing.
Me a Satanist, probably, from saying it. Probably. There'll be a comment or two in there.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. But I know Joel's in the zone when you start seeing that vein right here start to pop out.
So it's like when this vein starts popping, he's hitting the zone. When he's at the tip of the zone, the vein right here starts popping. And that one stays until he's done. And so he's not done yet. So you just let him rock.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm using that as like anything. I'm like, oh, it's starting down here. And it's like boom, and then it comes back. All right, I'm good.
I call it the Joel-meter.
Okay, cool.
I like it. We were talking about the cornerstone. You brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that in the Bible, from a metaphorical angle, that the cornerstone represents Jesus. He's the cornerstone of the church. It's the cornerstone of our beliefs. It's what Yeshua was put here on this earth to do. By the way, we talked about this earlier. He came through the bloodline of David. So you got this, shepherd boy who's going out here fighting this giant with the power of God. At the time, he probably didn't even know his bloodline was going to have Jesus come out of it. But these are these strong characters that were the precursors to Jesus Christ coming to us. But Psalm 118:22, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Again, the stone is Eben, the firestone. It represents this powerful, consecrated stone. So when they're talking about Yeshua and Jesus, he's represented as that. He is the power stone, or like you like to say, the philosopher's stone. Mm-hmm. He is the essence of what this entire universe or multiverses, for people that like to go down that road, is built on. It is. He is the essence of it, the Holy Spirit, the Trinity. It's all that. And it says it in the text. But you can go deeper because there's tons of verses that talk about the cornerstone. We know that 1 Peter 2:7-8, which we talked about earlier. Peter means stone, which that's another one for you, because he was Jesus's, favorite, basically. Yeah. Like that was Jesus's guy was Peter, and Peter was probably one of the most rugged, ridiculous disciples of Jesus. He denied him 3 times. He's chopping dudes' ears off. He's a wild dude.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Die for you. Would you? And then Jesus was like, "Would you really?"
Right.
You
right.
sure about that? You sure about that?
So this, though, is in the New Testament. So the stone is going to come from a different word, lithos, in the Koine Greek, which means substance. So now we're still going to this changing, this firestone, this powerful substance. It's representation of Jesus, what Jesus is. That's what, if you want to say that the bloodline of Yeshua always had metaphorical instances that represented Jesus, what better than David with a transmutated firestone that represented the very essence of Jesus?